Hello, everyone, and welcome to Soft Stories. I'm Stratton, and this is Pepper, and today we are going to be continuing our reading of the Snugglepot and Cuddlepie stories by May Gibbs. Previously, we saw Snugglepot and Cuddlepie have an adventure to try and locate a human, try and see one in the wild. They were told along the way that humans are awful and evil and destroy the bush and its creatures. But the one that they met was not so. He helped a little possum stuck in a trap to escape and bound its leg, proving that humans who care for little animals and who care for the world around them are not as bad as they may be made out to be. We were introduced to many characters: Little Ragged Blossom, who will feature in this next story, Lily Pilly, the actress with her bulldog aunt, Mr. Lizard, who I'm sure we will see again as well, and many others. I expect that there will be even more new faces and delightful illustrations in this next story. So let's get started. All right then. Here we are, back with Snugglepot and Cuddlepie. The last time we left off, we were in page 65, I think it was. Here we are, page 64. And so we'll continue from here with Little Ragged Blossom, further adventures of Ragged Blossom, Snugglepot, and Cuddlepie. I love these full colour illustrations. They begin each of the books and I think appear occasionally interspersed within them. But it's so nice to see the additional colour of the bush as well as the detail that the author is able to put in. So, let's begin. Little Ragged Blossom, and more about Snugglepot and Cuddlepie. You remember how, upon the killing of wicked Mrs. Snake, everyone became joyful, and rich Mr. Pilly, the father of Lily Pilly the actress, gave a dinner party at the Gum Inn, and how, afterwards, everyone was given a ticket for the Gum Blossom Ballet at Mr. Pilly's new theatre. Very well, then. Now, when the bad Banksia men saw their friend Mrs. Snake being overpowered by the Gumnuts and Mr. Lizard and Mr. Frog and their friends, they grew afraid and fled. And when they had come to their safe hiding place, they drew together in council to see how they might plan to revenge themselves on Snugglepot and Cuddlepie and Ragged Blossom. For, they said, if we destroy these stupid nuts, their friend Mr. Lizard will die of anguish, and he is our greatest enemy. Our hated foe, said one. Smoke and burn him, growled another. Drop and drown him, snarled another. Ha, said the biggest Banksia man. That's a good idea. We'll drown 'em. Ha ha. Listen. Then all the bad Banksia men put their heads together and made a wicked plot. are making their wicked plot in their banksia tree by the light of the full moon, as all wicked things take place. Now it happened that just under the tree where they were sitting, hidden by a bush, lay a friend of Mr. Lizard. When he heard Mr. Lizard's name, he cocked his head and listened, and when he heard what they said about drowning the nuts, he crept softly away till he was out of sight. Then he dashed along as fast as he could to find Mr. Lizard and tell him. But alas, this warning was never given. Just hear what comes of being greedy. Many people, when they go to big dinner parties, eat and drink more than is good for them, because the things are good, and they are greedy. Mr. Lizard was one of those greedies. He ate and drank so much at Mr. Pilly's party that he had to stay in bed all the next day, and his head ached, and the flies worried him, and he was so cross that no one could go near him. So when he saw his friend coming, he shouted, "Go away! I'm sick! Go away!" And he lashed his tail and wouldn't listen to a word. Naturally, his friend was offended and went away. So it happened that while Mr. Lizard lay moaning and groaning, all sorts of things were afoot, and he knew nothing about them. A big ship was lying in the harbour, and the captain had come ashore, and had invited little Ragged Blossom and Snugglepot and Cuddlepie to go on a long journey with him and see new countries. Quite a lot of other nuts and blossoms said they would like to go too, so it was arranged that the Snag should sail at once, and everybody was busy packing, and all the time Mr. Lizard lay tossing and grumbling on his bed. Now, in their excitement, Snugglepot and Cuddlepie forgot all about Mr. Lizard, and it was not until the ship was towing out into the stream that Mr. Lizard, hearing the shouts of the crowd on the wharf, sprang out of bed and rushed wildly down, calling, "Stop! Stop! Wait for me!" All the crowd took up the cry and shouted, "Stop!" Snugglepot and Cuddlepie saw Mr. Lizard and ran to the captain, begging him to be put back. But the captain, who was a big, stern man with a great beard and bushy eyebrows, frowned at them and said, "The tide's going out, and we must go with it." Then were Snugglepot and Cuddlepie very sad, and Ragged Blossom dropped tears into the sea as she hung over the side, waving to poor Mr. Lizard. "Oh, why did we forget him?" moaned Snugglepot. "He was so kind to me," wailed Ragged Blossom. "Our dear old friend," sobbed Cuddlepie. Mr. Lizard, frantic with distress, jumped into a little boat and rowed after them. He pulled with all his might, and the nuts on the ship shouted, "Come on!" and the people on the wharf shouted, "Hurrah!" as they saw his little boat get nearer and nearer to the big ship. But alas, just as he was nearly touching the side, the breeze caught the big green sails, filling them, and away went the Snag, out to sea, and leaving Mr. Lizard in his little boat far behind, like a speck in the distance. Mr. Lizard sat stiff as a tree trunk, staring after the snag. His eyes looked as if they would pop out, and he ground his teeth with rage. "Oh, gum, gum, gum," he groaned. Then he fell in a heap and rocked the boat in his grief and anger, for he had seen the captain, and he knew. That big captain, with his scrubby beard and bushy eyebrows, was. Who do you think? He was the biggest and baddest of the Banksia men. "And no one knows," cried Mr. Lizard. The air was fresh, and the little waves danced and sparkled in the sun as the snag sailed gracefully on, looking very like a big green butterfly on a blue sea. Everybody walked up and down the decks, laughing and chatting. Snugglepot and Cuddlepie and Ragged Blossom walked up and down too, and it was all so exciting and lovely that they soon forgot poor Mr. Lizard again. Now, though they didn't notice it, the little waves were growing bigger all the time, and the wind was getting stronger. "Isn't it gummy?" said Ragged Blossom. "Tree top," said Cuddlepie. "Juicy," chuckled Snugglepot. And all the time the waves were getting bigger and bigger. "Look at all those people leaning over the side. I wonder what they're looking at," said Cuddlepie. "Oh," said Snugglepot, "I feel strange." "So do I," said Ragged Blossom. "I've got a pain in my belt," groaned Cuddlepie. "I feel stranger and stranger," said Snugglepot. "I think I'll just go to bunk," said Ragged Blossom. But just then the snag rose up over a huge wave, and they all sat down and slid along the deck. Then the snag rose up at the other end, and they slid back again. "I don't like it," said Ragged Blossom. "I hate it," said Snugglepot. "So do I," said Cuddlepie. Then the snag rolled on one side, and they all slid that way. Then she rolled to the other side, and they all slid the other way. But this time they all went flop, bump, into a deep, dark hold, and landed upon a lot of feathers. "Where are we?" said Cuddlepie. "In the bottom of the boat, I think," said Snugglepot. "Hush," whispered Ragged Blossom. "I think I can hear voices." They all kept very still and listened, and some way off in the darkness they heard the captain's voice. "Now, mind," he was saying. "No nonsense. As soon as the moon is gone and the dark nights come, over they go, all three of them. Twig?" "Aye, aye, sir," said a gruff voice. "You do your work quickly," said the captain, "and I'll see you get paid well. And dumb's the word. Twig?" "Aye, aye, sir," answered the gruff voice. The nuts held their breath. They knew now who the captain was, and they knew he meant them to be thrown into the sea when the dark nights came. Then the captain and the sailor climbed up out of the hold by a long ladder and went away. "It's the Banksia men," whispered Snugglepot. "What shall we do?" asked Ragged Blossom. It's bright moonlight tonight, said Snugglepot, so we're safe. Let's hide in one of those big empty nuts, said Cuddlepie. Ooh, good root, said Snugglepot, and I'll go and bring down some food. Do be careful no one sees you, said Ragged Blossom. I'll be cunning as a dingo, said Snugglepot, and off he went up the long ladder, for he was very brave. By this time, Cuddlepie and Ragged Blossom had grown used to the dark hold, and could see quite a lot of things around them. There were passengers' trunks and bags, and a stack of huge nuts. Now, as they crept about, they heard a noise behind some bundles of clothes props. What was that? Whispered Ragged Blossom. I don't know. I'll go and see, said Cuddlepie. Look, look, exclaimed Ragged Blossom, and there, quite close to them, sticking out of a crack, was the end of a grey tail. Cuddlepie seized it and pulled, but the owner of the tail held fast. Come out, cried Cuddlepie, or I'll pull your tail off. Oh, oh, squeaked a little voice. Let me go, and I'll come out. Very well, quick sticks, said Cuddlepie, and out crept a thin, pale little rat with big, frightened eyes and nervous whiskers. What's your name? Asked Cuddlepie. Jerboa, said the poor little chap, but they mostly call me Winky. You're a stowaway? Said Cuddlepie. Yes, sir, answered Winky. Where are you going? Asked Cuddlepie. Back to my mother, please, sir, said the poor little fellow with tears in his eyes. I ran away from home to look for raisins, and I lost myself, I did. I had an unhappy time, sir. Snakes nearly ate me, and owls nearly ate me, and the Banksia men beat me, and I hid aboard this ship, and when I heard them say it was bound for a big bad city, and I want to go home to my mother, I do. Oh, and I'm so cold and hungry I am, sir. Please don't tell the captain. Poor little man, said Ragged Blossom. We'll give you some food when Snugglepot comes. I won't tell, said Cuddlepie, and he sat down by Winky and told him all about how the bad captain wanted to drown them. So you see, we must hide down here too, and we'll all help each other. Well, said little Jerboa eagerly, we shall get to Big Bad tonight, and I can show you a way off the ship. Ooh, can you? Said Cuddlepie and Ragged Blossom. How kind of you. And as they were talking, here came Snugglepot, climbing down the long ladder in a great haste. We're nearly into a city, and... Then, seeing Jerboa, he stopped in amazement. He's a friend, said Cuddlepie, and he told Snugglepot all the news. Oh, good root, said Snugglepot. Now, we'll eat some tips and things. I got them from the cook. By this time, the evening was closing in, and night fell upon the ship, and it became very dark. And presently, when the ship was tied to the wharf and everybody was bustling about, they all crept out of the hold, led by Jerboa, and along the deck in the shadow of the side. Once they were nearly discovered. A funny old woman, who was running about looking for her luggage, tripped upon the end of Jerboa's long tail and screamed. But there was so much noise and bustle that no one took any notice, and they crept on along the deck till they came to a place where a big rope was tied, stretched tightly from the ship's side across to the wharf.
"Now," said Winky, "this is the way. Cling to me and I'll take you over one at a time."
When they were safely landed on the wharf, Winky said,
"Follow me as fast as you can."
and he ran off into a dark shed, and they all ran after him. It was a long run, over fences, down roads, across bridges, through gardens, over roofs, till at last everyone was tired out, and it was getting light, and all the birds were talking. So they rested and looked about them. They were in a broad road with large houses on each side. Presently the sun rose, and as they sat warming, there came a large crowd of nuts down the road, holding up flags and singing.
"It's a strike procession,"
explained Winky.
"How?"
What? asked Snugglepot.
"It's a new way of making money,"
said Winky.
"Everybody strikes in Big Bad, and the one who hits the hardest gets the most."
Bully ant, said Snugglepot.
"And who gets hit?" "Everybody,"
said Winky.
"Let's go away then,"
said Ragged Blossom.
"It's only a little way to my house,"
said Winky, and he led them down a lane to a dear little house, all made of branches. Oh, poor Winky! There was a note on the door to say they were all away looking for him. He wept bitterly. Oh, and here we can see the strike procession. We want more clothes, more sunshine, more birthdays, more scent? I'm not sure what either of those ones say. But you can see all the gum nuts striking down the road, and all of the other people watching in the big, bad city.
"Never mind,"
said Ragged Blossom.
"You stay here and keep the house clean, and when they come home, how pleased they'll be."
So Winky cheered up and showed them over his home. It was full of rooms, all leading out of passages, and the rooms were lined with grass.
"Stay with me,"
said Winky.
till you get a home of your own."
Thank you, dear Winky, they all said. And now we'll all go out looking for work and make some money.
"There's plenty of work,"
said Winky. So Snugglepot went one way, and Cuddlepie another way, and Ragged Blossom another way. First, we'll see what Cuddlepie did. Well, he hadn't gone very far when a tram came along and stopped near him. There were a lot of people sitting in it.
"That looks like an easy way of getting about,"
thought Cuddlepie, so he jumped on. Presently a tram conductor came round. "Tickets," he said.
"No ticks on me,"
said Cuddlepie. "I said tickets," said the conductor.
"You mean little ticks?"
asked Cuddlepie. "I mean tickets," shouted the conductor. Ooh, life in the big bad city. We'll come back to this in just a moment.
"I don't know them,"
said Cuddlepie. "Here, none of your cheek," said the conductor. "Out you get, quick sticks." Poor Cuddlepie got off, and the tram rattled away, leaving him in the middle of the road. The street was full of people, hurrying about. In here we can see the street in Big Bad City, with people making drawings and pushing their children around in strollers. The fashions in the big city are very different from the ones in the place where Snugglepot and Cuddlepie come from, aren't they? I love these tiny little lizards. How very cute. If I could have a goanna that walked around with me, I think that would be a marvellous pet, but I doubt whether Pepper would like it very much. Tadpole Limited, Cockroach and Company. Interesting names for businesses. The street was full of people hurrying about. A man carrying a bundle of bush pencils, burnt sticks, went past, and as he went by, some pencils dropped. The man had gone. A bright idea came to Cuddlepie.
I'll draw some pictures on the ground, and the people will give me money,
he said to himself. He found a flat rock and drew his pictures, but though lots of people passed, no one gave him any money, and no one noticed his little pictures. All day long he sat there. Once, when he wasn't looking, someone stole his clothes, which he had taken off because it was so hot. But now the sun was sinking, and it grew chilly, and poor little Cuddlepie felt tired and hungry and cold.
I'll go back now,
said Cuddlepie to himself.
Perhaps the others have got some money.
But when he looked to see which way he had come, he couldn't remember. He hurried about, first one way and then another, but it grew darker, and poor little Cuddlepie ran along the street, calling, "Snugglepot, where are you? Winky Jabboa, Ragged Blossom, oh, where are you?" And as he ran along, he cried bitterly, for he was lost. Do we think, then, that this is little Cuddlepie with his drawings and his hat out in case anyone wished to give him some money? Maybe so. "Odds pods, what's this?" said a voice from the doorway. Cuddlepie stopped. A funny big nut was looking at him.
I don't know where I am,
sobbed Cuddlepie. Well, said the funny nut.
I'm lost,
sobbed poor Cuddlepie. Dear, said this funny man. Poor little chap, come in and tell me all about it. And so saying, the kind, funny man carried shivering little Cuddlepie into his warm house and wrapped him in a big rug and gave him some warm milk. And as he is quite safe and comfortable, we'll leave him for a while and see what happened to Snugglepot and Ragged Blossom. Snugglepot didn't walk very far before he came to a gate with a notice on it. Dr. Hocus Stickus wanted a strong nut to mix strong medicines. I'm strong, said Snugglepot, and in he went. Dr. Hocus Stickus looked him up and down and all around, and in his mouth, and counted his fingers and toes, and said, Know how to chew gum?
Yes.
Suck sap?
Yes.
Squeeze juices?
Yes,
said Snugglepot. Gather slugger slime? Yes, answered Snugglepot. Split hairs? Yes. Mix ant odor? Yes. Catch cockroaches? Yes, sir. Bite-o, said the doctor. You'll do. Come in and start. So Snugglepot found work almost at once, you see. Now, what about Ragged Blossom? When she left Snugglepot and Cuddlepie, she wandered into a paddock. There was a noisy little creek running through it, and it gurgled and sang so merrily that Ragged Blossom felt quite happy. "I'll just go with it," she said. "It's sure to lead to a nice kind of work." So she trotted on, and as she went she found beautiful flowers, little tiny ones by her feet and tall ones above her head. Then she heard voices, and looking about she saw numbers of bush babies coming towards her, Baronia babies, and wattle babies, and flannel flower babies, and lots more. "Are you the new model?" they all cried. Ragged Blossom felt very shy and couldn't say a word. "Come along," they shouted. "They're all waiting for you." And without stopping for Ragged Blossom to reply, they caught her hands and ran her along with them over the moss to a beautiful house. They opened a door and pulled her in. "Here she is," they cried joyfully. Ragged Blossom looked up and saw a long, wide room full of queer people, all sitting and standing about as if they were waiting for something. A little artist man came hurrying forward. He smiled at her gently and said, "You're late, but never mind, you'll make a very nice model." Then he put Ragged Blossom up on a high place, and all the funny people began to draw her. She had to stand very still. I suppose that this is the artist's studio. Yes, I think that's an incredible likeness, don't you? "Shall I get some money?" asked Ragged Blossom, "if I stand quite still?" "Of course," answered the little man, and all the time he kept walking about and telling the other funny people how badly they were drawing. Poor Ragged Blossom wasn't used to being a model, so she soon grew very tired and fell in a heap and lay there fast asleep. The artist man, thinking she was ill, ran out to call his wife, and they carried her upstairs and put her into a beautiful soft bed, all hung with spiderweb curtains. "Poor little Petal," said the artist's wife. "She must be very ill. Run, dear, and get the doctor." "I will, dear," said the artist, and dashing out, he ran and didn't stop till he reached the house of the great doctor, Hocus Stickus. "Bless me, of course I'll come at once," said the doctor when he had heard the story. "And you," he said, turning to Snugglepot, "come with me. Bring the sapping dish and the cutter, in case we may have to chance to chop something off." And so saying, he gathered up some rolls of leaves and some extra strong medicine, and they all hastened to the artist's house. When they reached the bedside, imagine the surprise and joy with which Snugglepot looked upon little Ragged Blossom, lying there in the bed. "It's my little friend," he exclaimed. "Ragged Blossom," he called, "look at me. I'm Snugglepot. See, I'm here." "Come," said the doctor, "let us go away. She's only sleeping." So they all crept out of the room. Snugglepot leant across and gently shook Ragged Blossom. Wake up, little Blossom," he called to her. But Ragged Blossom still slept, and while Snugglepot was looking at her, wondering what he should do, he heard a great noise outside, shouts and yells. He ran to the door and looked out, and there, just coming up over the top of the stairs, was the great wicked captain, the bad Banksia man. Snugglepot banged the door and fastened it, and leant against it with all his strength.
Ragged Blossom, he screamed, come and help me! Help! Help!
He shouted. Little Blossom sat up and blinked her eyes, then she scrambled out of bed.
Come and help, Blossom,
called Snugglepot. But even as he called, the door burst open, and in rushed the big, bad Banksia man. With one great hand, he grabbed up poor little Blossom, who was putting on her dress, and with the other he clutched Snugglepot from the ground where he had fallen. It was all done in the winking of an eyelid. Down the stairs, out of the house, into the dark, and away sped the bad Banksia man through the bush, cracking the branches and crushing the flowers as he ran. And that, my lovely friends, seems an excellent place to leave off for today. I love a good cliffhanger, don't you? I hope you've enjoyed this continuation of the Snugglepot and Cuddlepie series, and I hope you'll look forward to the next. Thank you so much for joining me today on Soft Stories. I must leave you now, but until next we meet, I wish you all the best, and goodbye.